Hey Paul, what in your opinion is the greatest LucasArts adventure game of all time?
Oh,
Wrong,
mate,
it's
this.
Maniac Mansion! So now today we're going to be discussing why is Maniac Mansion your favorite LucasArts game of all time, Paul?
I'm just now learning that it's my favorite, but it actually should be pretty easy to run with. Because it kind of is. It walks that line where it's like it's the first, it's the innovator, so it's like it kind of has rights to being the first. Whereas the latter ones I love, but this is what started it all, and I mean, let's face it, mate. Without Maniac Mansion, we wouldn't have Thimbleweed Park. So yeah, there we go. It's my favorite. I
All
got
right.
that out of the
You
way.
got,
That's
you got
not
that
the
out of your
last one.
system? Are we good? Are we good?
Yeah, I wouldn't say out of my system, but yeah, there's at least one ticked off.
All right. Well, let's focus on Maniac Mansion today, because as you can tell, Maniac Mansion is my favorite LucasArts adventure game of all time, and correctly so, because if it's not yours, then you are wrong, like objectively. But it's one of those things where I don't. Just as you fail to ever try to not mention Thimbleweed Park, I guess I tend to favor Sierra over LucasArts. Um, at least as far as companies, LucasArts games are awesome. They're amazing. They're great in a lot of ways, individually better than most of the Sierra catalog. But I've sort of always had that soft spot for Sierra over LucasArts.
I completely agree. I mean, I do favor Sierra, but it is close. It's like 60-40, 70-30,
Yeah, that's
something
about
like
right.
that. And I think in your defense, you kind of balance it out because even though Sierra's kind of the company, as you said, that we talk about probably more than than LucasArts or any other, your kind of go-to game is Loom, so it kind of balances out. We can
Mhm.
talk a lot about Sierra as long as we're both going on about Loom and Thimbleweed, which is sort of Lucas, not really, but
I think one of the things about Maniac Mansion that gets to me is that it kind of speaks to me as a Sierra fan, because it is that LucasArts game where you could screw up and you could die and you
Mhm.
could hit unwinnable states. So it was basically the LucasArts take on a Sierra game. I'm pretty sure it wasn't actually, but in practice, it kind of was.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I know Ron Gilbert had said that his inspiration for Maniac Mansion came from watching a younger family member playing King's Quest and things like that. So I mean, King's Quest was the poster child for adventure games early on, and so that's all they knew. And he went on to write that article of why adventure games suck, which is a great article coming from someone who loves adventure games, and more importantly, coming from Ron Gilbert, like godfather of adventure games. So it is a tongue-in-cheek title, but if you get time, go to his website. I think it's like grumpygamer dot something. Um, I got you halfway there. You can Google it, Grumpy Gamer. But he wrote an awesome article called "Why Adventure Games Suck," and it's kind of his journey into how he took his LucasArts. I was going to say his company. I guess that'd be George's. But how he went from Maniac Mansion to really friendly as far as not being able to die games like Sam and Max and Loom and all them things. But it's a cool article, regardless.
So, how old were you when you played Maniac Mansion?
Um, you know, I was probably 10 years old,
Okay.
9 or 10, something like that. Yeah, I really got into games somewhere between 8 and 10. And in order, just top three, or else this will be like a 4 hour just me talking rant. And if I'm interrupted, I will start over. No, so some Rain Man Twitch there, sorry. Um, I played Police Quest, Gold Rush, and then Maniac Mansion.
I see.
So it was all in that 8 to 10 years old range. How about you?
Funny. I think it was roughly around that time as well. But again, you got to factor in there's a bit of an age difference. Not a huge age difference, but there's like a handful of years between us. And again, I think we came across it probably roughly around the same age in life, even though separated by a few years. Because I'm pretty sure it came out. I'm pretty sure I played it very close to when it came out. It was all over. I remember it being all over the magazines. It was always featured in everything. It was a huge deal, Maniac Mansion, because it was just such a. It was very innovative in a lot of ways. I remember some of the gaming magazines had like full maps and walkthroughs of it. They released a TV series, sort of, um, a TV series that we're gonna save that for another episode, but
Literally, if we can muscle through more than a few episodes, yeah.
if I can muscle through more than the first episode, I tried watching it again, and I'll talk about this another time when we actually sit down to talk about the series. But it's clear that they saw that this thing was like a big deal and used the name to leverage a show at all, and then just decided to do whatever the hell they wanted with it.
Right, they took the namesake and it kind of went a different direction. Which is always really disappointing because your target audience is probably fans of the game. So if you're not staying on that subject, it's going to disappoint those who love the game and those who didn't even know about it. It's just a shit TV show.
Mhm.
Even Eugene Levy couldn't carry it, I guess.
I didn't get all the way through the first episode. I think I stopped like about halfway through, and it's because I just couldn't take it. It was just unbearable. I couldn't believe what I was watching. But so it's weird. It's sad to see that these like comedy geniuses just that's what they came up with. And Maniac Mansion is like some good material if they actually wanted to, play the game and try to base this on it.
Yeah, they should have like literally stuck to the script. Like just play out the game and you'll get some laughs as opposed
Pretty
to whatever the fuck
similar,
they
yeah.
did. Because I mean, you're talking like without commercials, like 23-minute episode, you couldn't get through it. That's not a good sign.
But yeah, so I mean, it was great because there was the huge name at the time. Obviously, Maniac Mansion was like, did you say it was like the first LucasArts adventure game
I
or
think
one of them?
one of them, I think Labyrinth was the first adventure game from them, based off the movie.
Hmm.
But it's really hard game to find. You have to jump on eBay to get it. It wasn't put on GOG or Steam, in other words. But yeah, I think Labyrinth was the first adventure game, but it's almost like what Mystery House is to King's Quest. Definitely higher quality than Mystery House, which is just black screen with white lines, but nonetheless, kind of a let's just see how this goes sort of thing, and then actually try. But for all intents and purposes, we could say it's basically the first adventure game, the first
Right.
recognized one, commercial hit, all them things. First one written with Scum, obviously the
Yeah, but
acronyms.
obviously it came before things like the Monkey Island or any of the Indiana Jones games.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I've read that it was released in 1987, which was hard to believe. I thought it would be a little bit older than that, just because like Last Crusade was like 88,
Yeah.
or something, maybe 89. But they must have just pumped them out from there.
I think it was 89 or 90 when the movie came out. So I think the game came out probably maybe the next year following, so probably 90 or 91. So if Maniac Mansion came out in 87, I guess it would make sense. So I was probably about 8 or 9 when I played it. Or at least when I first tried to play it. But so yeah, it was shared to me. It was a shared game to me when I was young and did not understand the ethics of sharing games. But what was not shared to me was the manual that had the access codes to the big security door. So I could only really play like a fraction of the game before blowing up the mansion. So for the longest time, a lot of it was me just sort of like playing what's basically a demo and really wanting to play the rest of the game. And seeing it come out on Nintendo, which I didn't have, seeing it come out in like basically everything. I can't remember what the first format it came out with was, if it was Commodore or Amiga or a PC. I'm thinking maybe Commodore, but I had a PC at the time.
I'm almost certain it was Commodore.
Mhm.
It could be wrong, but I think it was the C64. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that makes sense. But at any rate, I only had a PC, so I had no other means of playing it except for this copy that I could not do anything without blowing up the mansion. But I mean, of that small portion of the beginning of the game, I played the hell out of it. I tried to do everything to try to actually see if I could get past that security door of copy protection. And I read up on all these like little things you can do, and I tried to um I tried various different ways to sort of like get around it. Wait till characters would walk through the door and try to sneak past them, but that didn't work. But yeah, so I guess a lot of my fondness was just this anticipation of wanting to play it while also sort of getting to play a little bit of it and seeing how awesome it was. and it was really innovative at the time that you get to choose which characters you're going to bring with you, and each one has a specialty, and each one, or well, not Jeff. I think he sucks. Was it Jeff the surfer?
Not you, Jeff.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, one of them was useless. I think it was him.
No, I know who it was. He's a surfer guy. I just forget what his name is. I think it was Jeff, but he was useless. So it's, which is also kind of funny when you think about it now in hindsight, because you'd wonder exactly what the purpose of a character who was useless would be, and you think about it now, it's sort of like, well, he's kind of the hard mode, because
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, because because he's useless. Usually, you can have a couple characters, and depending on each character, each one has a path to an end game, a victory end game. But if you have, each one has that path, but together you can come up with multiple solutions to any individual puzzle. Whereas if you bring Jeff, who's useless, you
Fucking
have to
Jeff.
rely on like the one path and not screwing that up. And to be honest, or sorry, not even honest, but like the way it's set up is that if you only have one path to the end game and you do something wrong, you could actually screw up your chances of winning.
Right, exactly. Yeah, from my memory serves me correctly, it's you could almost pick whoever you wanted as long as you had Bernard. He was really crucial to being able to solve that game. Well, crucial if you picked a less talented character. I don't know why I'm trying to be nice to fake pixelated people. But
Well,
yeah,
Bernard was kind of like easy mode,
right. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So he was easy mode. Uh, Not using Bernard was kind of medium, and then using Jeff was hard.
Yeah, no, exactly. And to your point a moment ago, it was a really breakthrough game because, from what I understand, it was the first adventure game that you could play as different characters.
Hmm.
You know, a selection, a group of characters, and choose different ones, which was really cool for a few reasons. And I think that the foremost reason is that you could therefore get different endings to the game,
That's right.
and therefore you can have great replayability because then you can go back and play it on Jeff mode, and make it hard on yourself, and but it was really cool is that you could play with different characters, you had to work with them in tandem, exploit the advantages and whatever, and then furthermore you get different endings and more
Mhm.
replayability.
There's actually even one ending that I didn't realize existed until like earlier today when I was trying to refresh my memory on all the different possible endings. And one of them is if you play as Wendy and you get the Meteor's manuscript published and he becomes a famous writer. And when you do that, the end game is he gets to appear on a talk show and he credits you as being why he made it big. It turns out that if you actually, I don't know if you need Bernard for this. You probably need Bernard for this. So if you play Bernard and Wendy and you have Bernard call the Meteor police, and then you finish the game with through the Wendy route, the then while the Meteor is on the talk show, the Meteor police will interrupt and come over and arrest him anyways.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing
So
tonight.
they think about these little things. Yeah.
No, it's really cool. Yeah, another cool thing about this game that I really liked is that there's so many different versions of it that it makes it fascinating. Like the C64 graphics are different than that of the version 1 PC graphics,
Hmm.
which we could say is the original. And then there's the version 2 PC release, which was I think they called it Deluxe. Maniac Mansion Deluxe, I believe.
I think Deluxe was the fan remaster.
Yeah, I got crossed up. That's my
Yeah.
mistake. So it was the version 1 was original, and then version 2 would have been enhanced.
Yes, that's right.
It's the enhanced version, and to those who don't have a visual or haven't played both or played one or the other, it's kind of like roughly comparing in Sierra terminology to like AGI and SCI.
That's right.
Was original was kind of AGI, enhanced was kind of SCI, and then the fan made game from AGS. deluxe is I would say that's almost like the FM Towns version. You know, it's just got all the bells and whistles, just gorgeous backgrounds. Just took it up that one extra notch. And then of course there's the NES version, which was really cool. One of the very few games or beloved adventure classics to get ported to NES besides King's Quest. Was it King's Quest 5?
King's Quest 5 went to NES.
And then the King's Quest 1 went to Sega or something.
I don't remember King's Quest 1 being released on console. I'm pretty sure it probably did, but I just don't remember it.
Yeah, I think it was 1 and it went to Sega, but less I digress.
But it is also kind of weird because, like, in the timeline in my head, it's weird to match up King's Quest 5 as NES era.
Yeah, it's really strange. It was definitely a kind of a regression in graphics because by the time we got to 5, it was looking pretty SCI, looked pretty sharp, and the NES version obviously definitely looks way more AGI, a lot more blocky and whatever. I've got the game. I played it for like 5 minutes. I kind of didn't really feel the need to go through it. I think adventure games with a controller is a bit clunky. Like, there's nothing more frustrating than moving an arrow around the screen with a joystick. I hate it. But nonetheless, I think it's really cool what they did there, and people online seem to be fascinated by it because before this episode, in an effort to do research, which didn't go well, I had a hot pocket and a microwave, and it got complicated. But I tried for a minute to do research, and when you Google Maniac Mansion on when you Google it on YouTube, whatever, I guess
Technically, that's correct.
The word Google has replaced the word search in my brain, I guess. When you search Maniac Mansion on YouTube, you'll pretty much get almost nothing but NES reviews. Like, maybe in the last few years, people discovered it and got fascinated by it. There's a shitload of reviews on YouTube for the NES one. So if you want to check that out, just get a visual.
I'll tell you something. Maniac Mansion is probably the best adventure game to port over to NES because Maniac Mansion was designed to be controlled with the arrow keys on the keyboard.
Right.
So it was basically designed to not have a mouse. So there wasn't really a whole lot to transition other than, obviously they had to redesign it for the graphics and, the different capabilities between a computer, whichever computer it is that you played on, and a console. But, otherwise it was, it's not like a lot of other Sierra games where, you really need that responsiveness of a mouse to get you from here to there as fast as your hand can move you. This was the sort of, even though you can die, even though there's a lot of ways to screw yourself over, it's never really been based on, you got to do this within the next couple seconds. Usually when you die, it's because you kind of deserve it, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
You kind of, that's kind of also the fun thing. A lot of the deaths are kind of Easter eggs in that you kind of had to go out of your way to discover how. If it's not something that blew up the mansion, because that was the sort of something that would, if you didn't think properly enough, then that would happen. But even then, those would give you like a few seconds to realize what's going on and figure a way around it. Whereas killing the kids individually kind of required a little bit of extra effort. Like you had to drain the swimming pool, send a kid down there, and then refill the swimming pool with the kid still down there. You had to know that's going to kill them. Or at least you had to know something bad was going to happen. One of the elephants in the room, when we're talking about Maniac Mansion, is that quite a few versions of this has the ability, depending which characters you choose, to put a hamster in a microwave and explode it, and then you can give it back to the guy who owns the hamster, Weird Ed, and then he will kill you, which you kind of deserve if you're going to do that.
Right, yeah. Should probably also be put on like a watch list or something. Yeah. Not that I really support that, but in those cases, yeah, that's like, first you put a hamster in a microwave in a video game, and next thing you know, there's neighborhood cats in your freezer. So yeah, watch out for them lot. Not that we probably all didn't do it once we found out we could.
So number one, you had to kind of find which characters were able to do that. So there's a really good chance that depending who you were playing as, you wouldn't have been able to do it at all, and you probably wouldn't have tried again. Or if you got the right characters and you used the exact right characters in which to attempt this, and then you decided, okay, and it's something I would do. I would definitely try to see if they thought of this and if they would actually allow me to do it. And then I would see, I blew up a hamster. And I would probably, if I didn't know any better, I'd probably be like, okay, that's probably not what I was supposed to do, so I'll reload my game. So no, you can't just do that. You would have to say, hey, I'm going to double down and just like go with this, pick up the dead hamster, find his owner, and give it back to him and see what happens. And then you die.
Somebody in LucasArts had a bad experience with hamsters because even in Day of the Tentacle, aka sort of Maniac Mansion 2,
Basically, yeah.
you don't kill it, but you do put it in a deep freeze for like 500 years. So they definitely had somebody got bit in like the knob or whatever by a hamster. They had some bad experiences. And I'm sorry, I have to say, but there's a really fun Easter egg in Thimbleweed Park regarding it. There's a hamster in Ransom the Clown's trailer. And Ransom's a well-rotten cat or whatever, and you can try and get Ransom to put in the microwave, and even Ransom, who's just a rotten, horrible person, basically, is like, what kind of sick bleep you got to be to put a hamster in a microwave, which was a lot of fun. But yeah, and I think to your point, it's when you say you kind of have to try to die, or if you die you deserve it, it's kind of like saying, unlike the brutality of some of the Sierra games, it's like you didn't just like hit the wrong arrow key and fell off a staircase. Like it's not like super unfair, like, oh my god, I was just trying to go up or down these stairs, mate. It's more like, you kind of maybe not went out of your way, but like, Nurse Edna chases you in the kitchen and you chose not to run for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Like, you really got to make an effort to die for the most part.
And that doesn't even kill you. She'll just throw you into the dungeon, which is escapable.
That's right. Good point. And that scene well scared me too.
Yeah.
Even when I replayed it, there's something so just jumpy and creepy about it. Ice blue skin and just the right amount of 8-bit music just scared the shit out of me, even to this day.
One of those little facts that's kind of obligatory to mention anytime talking about Maniac Mansion is that the first batch of NES carts that was released, you were able to kill the hamster. But once it was discovered, they had to take that feature out. So depending which copy you have, you might or might not be able to kill that hamster.
Oh, now I'm gonna have to put mine in and try it tonight to see which one I got.
Yeah.
Fuck. Why'd you do that to me, mate? I got work to do later. Damn it. Well, killing a hamster, if I can, comes second to work any day. But some other mentionable things I thought was kind of fun about this game. It's just little silly things. Was so Ron Gilbert kind of, I wouldn't say pioneered it because one never really knows, but he was very vocal. That's probably the right nomenclature for it. I don't know if I use that word right or not. I just wanted to sound
I think
fancy.
it's close, anyways.
Oh, cool. All right, yeah. Look at me. Drop out using 3 syllable words. Anyway.
Actually, wait, nomenclature's 4 syllables.
Well, I did say drop out before that, so I'm not misleading anyone. No false modesty here. So Ron Gilbert was really vocal about his puzzle dependency charts, as he calls them. Another thing you can check out, and I did in the interim check it out, and it is grumpygamer.com. So you can go there and check out the why adventure games suck, but also check out his little tab or blog or write up, whatever, on puzzle dependency charts, because it's well helpful for developers and really cool for just players in general to have kind of an insight onto how adventure games are made. I think it's pretty universal, but it damn sure works for all the LucasArts games. And these charts, basically are a nice visual way for the creators to plan out, if a player does this, it can lead to this or that. If he chooses this, then blah, blah, blah. I'm not describing this well at all. It's a visual
it's like
thing.
a flow chart.
Thank you. Yes,
Okay.
yes. That's some high school graduate shit right there. Thank you, mate. One fun little sort of Easter egg, and I'm not sure if it's in all versions or not. I think it is, but if you go to Weird Ed's bedroom, the puzzle dependency chart for the game is actually hanging up on the wall in there.
Oh.
And obviously, it's extremely low resolution, so I doubt it's extremely.
I think I
accurate,
know
but
exactly what you're talking about. I just didn't realize that was what it was.
Yeah. I didn't the first few times I played it either. I had no idea, but yeah, I watched a cool little YouTube on Ron Gilbert giving a postmortem on Maniac Mansion, and he mentioned that, and a few other fun little tidbits, none of which I remember. except for I don't know why I remember this one, but Razor was based off of Gary Winnick's girlfriend at the time, whose name was Ray.
Uh,
It's not even that fun, but those are the two I remember. Um,
um, but yeah, and I don't know. It was especially the impact of the time it came out. I'm not sure if especially out of the games that I've played, I don't think there were games I've played up until then that really, as far as adventure games go, that really had multiple solutions.
right.
A lot of them were. I mean, they were to some degree. I mean, I think even King's Quest One had certain puzzles that had multiple solutions, but never quite to the extent where choosing which characters you play could quite quite largely impact the game. It's a fairly significantly different game. I wouldn't say completely, but it's a fairly significantly different game if you're playing it, say, as Bernard and doing like a Bernard path, or if you have Wendy on your team and decide to do the Wendy path, or the musicians, or the photographer, or if you want Jeff on your team. But
Fucking Jeff. He was the original Keith.
yes. Although he actually could do stuff. He
Yeah,
was yeah.
he didn't just take smoke breaks. Yeah,
Mhm.
in his defense.
He was a good I actually saw a speed run where they used Jeff, and he was good for just being like the kind of decoy that they need to just sort of fast teleport to the dungeon by getting him caught.
That's all I thought of when you said it in the very beginning of the episode. I'm like, I thought of that exact moment. I'm like, well, you could send him to the door for the package and send him as the decoy. So yeah, there we go. It'll work.
That's basically all he is. He's a decoy. So yeah, I mean, it would be incorrect, I suppose, to say that it was the first game that had multiple solutions to puzzles, but it was like you said about the replayability. Like it was kind of a different game depending on who you used, and they kind of LucasArts kind of did this a little bit later on too with like something like Fate of Atlantis, where you could choose like three fairly different games depending on if you want like solo, team, or action paths. And just I don't know, it's really kind of cool, especially for the time, because it's sort of like you've never seen anything quite like that, where it's just sort of like, hey, choose which characters you want. And I don't remember if they give you sort of like a description of the character at the character select screen. They do, right?
They give you a description of more like it's more of like a personality description. You know,
Mhm.
they don't really allude to how helpful or not they'll be though.
Oh
You know,
no,
it's
no, of
more
course not. But they'll tell you basically what they're about.
yeah, like this guy's in the new wave music and he's totally rad
That's
or
right.
whatever would work for the time. But it's just personality based. Definitely didn't give you a heads up like nod, you should pick him or you shouldn't pick
No,
her
no, no, of
or the
course.
shit at this or that. Which maybe would have been nice, but I'm kind of glad they didn't.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's not even about a different way around the puzzles. Like you said, it's kind of gives you a whole different game in a sense, or a way around the game, a different
Mhm.
story, the way it plays out, hence different endings, different characters. It was well ahead of its time for
But you
sure.
did bring up a really good point about how they kind of give you a peek into the character personalities, but they don't actually like allude to the fact that, hey, you know what, Bernard is actually like the most useful guy, or Jeff is completely useless. You really don't know which mode you're getting. You could have, let's say Bernard and Wendy, which is like kind of like a powerhouse team that you can like do anything and win, versus if you have Jeff and um, I don't know, anyone else. You don't know that Jeff is useless. Jeff is just sort of this guy, and he's when you play the game for the first time, you don't know who's better than other people. It's very possible that you're like, hey, this guy seems like a pretty cool dude, and you don't realize that he is hard mode.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny too because I wouldn't ask them to like. Obviously, they'd be a little more subtle, but like Bernard's the best, and so sucks, and but I would kind of it wouldn't be out of the realm of asking to be like Bernard's skill set includes, and
Right.
Razor's skill set includes. Like that would be a nice subtle way of just letting you know what they excel at, and then if you got to Jeff and it was like, yeah, Jeff's a fun guy to party with, but he makes a shitty roommate. The-
Well, I mean, they do kind of they say that Bernard is like a science guy, I guess. They say that they talk about how Sid and Razor are they're musicians. They do point out that they have like a band and stuff like that.
Right, right.
But
And it's funny because as you say that, really, Bernard's the only one through the explanation that gives any sort of clue that they might help, because you don't feel like going into a mansion to rescue somebody. You'd need a musician, or like, a punk rocker like Razor or whatever. But you read one of them's a scientist. You're like, yeah, probably need that guy. But yeah, the rest of them is just like, yeah, this guy's a real chill dude. Like, all right, I guess he'll relax the team, keep everyone calm. I don't know, but yeah,
actually, if anything, it's kind of funny because if anything, the character select screen probably tries to discourage you from playing as Bernard, because number one, they make him look really nerdy at a time when nerds aren't particularly cool, right?
right,
So they make it very obvious. Even his character's description, he's I don't know if they call him a nerd, but he's very nerd, and he's the only one in the character selection. If you choose him, his facial expression changes.
oh
He's
really,
he's the only one that does this. So everyone else, it just puts a little box around them to show that you've selected them.
right.
When you
I
do it
didn't
to
realize his
Bernard,
facial.
he gives a look on his face like he was not expecting you to choose him, and now he's scared.
Oh, poor guy's got low self-esteem.
Yeah.
Uh,
So he totally
but
doesn't want you to choose him. And in fact, in the beginning, well, when you start the game, and Dave is sort of like, okay, if there's anyone who doesn't want to go through with this, Bernard tries to run away.
that's right, yeah. That's interesting because even though the facial expression could be like, oh, maybe I mucked up by choosing him. If you were to really overthink it and come to the conclusion like no one else's facial expression changed, that could be a little clue. Like he's the special one because he'd done something different than the rest. That's interesting. I wonder what the
But
intention was there.
yeah, but the thing is, based on what you would imagine, based on what you would assume, that
Right.
kind of his facial expression kind of suggests that he's not a good one to choose.
Yeah, he yes, he doesn't inspire confidence at all.
Yeah. But yeah, and yet he's the best one. So much so that he's the only returning of the playable characters. He's the only one who returns in Day of the Tentacle, or at least as a
Yeah.
playable character.
And now that you mentioned Day of the Technical, and not to get off topic at all, I'll make this really short. But one thing I thought was just to get your thoughts on this. I've never had a particular issue with this, but today, just looking back at it, because my 4-year-old really likes Day of the Technical. A lot of that is me forcing it down his throat. Like, hey, here's a bunch of educational games, and then if you want to play a fun game, it's this one. Sorry. No minions or gumball or whatever, none of that. You're gonna play this. But anyway, so he right likes that game, so I've been through the first 5 minutes of it like 400 times, and so got in the layout of the house. What I found it just a little bit odd. I won't say disappointing because I don't mean it, so that's the reason not to say it. Anyway, what I find odd and what I want to get your thoughts on is why the mansion changed so much, because I felt like the original mansion would have pretty much worked in Day of the Technical the way it was, like the vault room, the basement, the pool. There was a lot to work with. In other words, it was a really large environment. And then with Day of the Technical, which was meant to be mm, somewhere between a sequel and a spiritual successor, I guess you could say a sequel. I mean, it does start off the game, the monologue saying, "I never thought I'd go back to the mansion." Why they changed it from like this creepy sort of mansion to a hotel?
I mean, I guess the easiest answer to describe in character would probably just be they renovated. But in terms of like, I guess there's just the practicality of like, they had an idea for a game. They kind of, the art direction is very different between the first and second game, entirely, in general. And I guess they just sort of like wanted to make the mansion suit the game that they wanted to make, as opposed to cling to the way it was and try to make the game revolve around that.
Right.
I don't really know. I can't put words in anyone's mouths. I'm just assuming that it was just sort of like they just didn't sweat it. Basically, they're just like, okay, well,
Yeah.
who cares? So we'll just do it our way, and we'll make a good game nonetheless. And if we make a great game, then no one will particularly care, except obviously nerds do. We do. We think about this sort of stuff. You know what? We just got to ignore that and just in order to enjoy the game.
Yeah, exactly. But in the end, you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, I love it. It's universally admired game for the most part. Everyone loves Day of the Technical, but basically, so they pretty much succeeded in what you're saying, where it's like they made a great game, so didn't really matter.
We are we are chugging along here. So, are there any final thoughts you might have on Maniac Mansion and how awesome it is, and why it's your favorite game of all time?
I will say it's got to be up there for the introduction of the Scum engine. I absolutely love it. I love, as we've already discussed, that how you can combine different players, get different endings. I think that's absolutely mint. One thing I didn't mention that was kind of cool, and that this you're just kind of walking a line. So be good out there when I tell you this information. If you own the NES cartridge, you have to own it. Don't be a prick. All right.
Don't be a tuna head.
Yeah, that was so much better.
Yes.
Really showed me up back there. Well done. If you own the NES cartridge and have the capability of getting the bio off of it, then there's fan-made hacks for the NES version. There's two of them that I know of. One of them is like a zombie take on it, which is really kind of cool. And all it does, it changes the story just a little bit, but mostly changes the graphics. Anything zombies, kind of neat to an extent. It was oversaturated a few years ago. Now I feel like I can breathe and it's becoming cooler again. I can let it back into my life a little bit. Yeah, maybe a little too soon, but nonetheless. So again, if you own the NES cartridge, this mate named Rilo something, you have to go on your own from there, made two hacks for it. One's named after himself and the other's called Zombie something. Again, just, Google it if you own the cartridge, but it's pretty cool because, it's just a slightly fresh take on a game we all love with the writing's just a little bit different, obviously a little more cutting edge, a little more naughty, modern, whatever. So that's kind of a neat thing to do if you own the NES version. So that's pretty much the only other thing I wanted to say on it. What about you?
Well, in closing, be honest with me. Is it your favorite game of all time?
It's like
Yes, it is.